Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're diving straight into one of the most common and honestly sneakiest logical tricks used to manipulate information right under our noses. I mean, we're bombarded by data, quotes, and statistics every single day, right? But how much of what we're actually shown is the whole truth? Well, get ready because in this explainer, we are going to uncover the deceptive appearance of truth by breaking down a manipulation tactic that is literally hiding in plain sight. So, picture this for a second. You're wandering through a local farmer's market. You walk past a fruit stand and spot this basket of absolutely flawless, shiny red cherries. They look incredible, so you buy them. But then you get home, pour them into a bowl, and yuck. You realize the seller meticulously stacked all the absolute best, most perfect cherries right at the very top, while the entire bottom half is bruised, moldy, and just completely spoiled. You were basically sold a carefully crafted illusion. Well, that sneaky fruit seller? They're doing the exact same thing that manipulative debaters, marketers, and politicians do with information every single day. They take their facts, their data, and their quotes, and they arrange them to create this completely flawless, perfect argument on the surface. But just beneath that glossy top layer, they are deliberately hiding the rotten, contradictory truth. It looks beautiful, but it's an entirely engineered reality. Which brings us to our first main question. What exactly is the cherry-picking fallacy? Formally, the cherry-picking fallacy is the act of pointing to individual cases or data points that perfectly confirm your position, while completely ignoring a massive chunk of related data that contradicts you. And the real kicker here? It's not about outright lying. They aren't making things up. The data they're showing you might be 100% real. The deception is all about what they're strategically choosing not to show you. It's selectively telling only a very specific, highly favorable part of the truth. All right, let's look at how the sausage is actually made here. This fallacy always comes together in three distinct steps. First, the manipulator starts with a predetermined conclusion. They already decided what they want to prove. Second, they sift through a mountain of evidence and select only the specific data that fits that narrative. And third, this is crucial, they hide, bury, or aggressively ignore all contradicting evidence. It's a totally backward way of finding the truth. Instead of letting the evidence lead to a conclusion, they're forcing the evidence to fit a conclusion they've already locked in. Let's move on to examining some everyday examples. I guarantee you've fallen for at least one of these. Let's start with a classic one. Imagine seeing the phrase, "an absolute thrill," plastered on a shiny new movie poster. Sounds like a must-watch, right? The studio definitely wants you to think the critic loved it. But let's look at the full picture when we restore the missing pieces. The actual review said, "It is an absolute thrill to leave the theater after this terrible movie ends." Wow, by just cherry-picking three little words out of a sentence, the entire meeting was dramatically inverted. The words were real for sure, but the truth was destroyed. And this brilliantly illustrates one of the biggest takeaways from this explainer. Context is everything. When you strip away the surrounding environment, the nuances, the larger picture, you're removing the very fabric of reality. Removing context is exactly what gives bad actors the power to twist reality to fit their own self-serving narratives. Trusting an isolated quote or a single data point without looking for the context leaves you incredibly vulnerable to manipulation. It's wild how this works with statistics too. Think about a tiny 5% slice of data. When you're being fed cherry-picked info, your attention is forced onto that tiny sliver. It shines, it makes sense, it confirms your biases. But you're made completely blind to the massive 95% gray area taking up the rest of reality, the ignored evidence that proves the exact opposite. Statistics can be fiercely abused just by choosing where to put the magnifying glass. And this isn't just some abstract theory. This hides everywhere. We just talked about movie posters, but what about resumes? In a job interview, you always highlight your wins and conveniently leave out your massive failures, right? That's kind of like a mild, socially acceptable form of cherry picking, but it gets darker. Political campaigns constantly throw out isolated stats to prove an opponent is failing while ignoring broader positive trends. Or those late-night miracle diet ads, they'll loudly shout about the one person who lost 50 pounds while silently burying the study showing the product did absolutely nothing for 99% of everyone else. We're going to talk about exactly why this is so dangerous in just a second. But first, a quick word on building a community of critical thinkers.
Our big goal with this explainer is to build a vibrant community of people who aren't easily manipulated by these kinds of logical tricks. So if you're enjoying peeling back the layers of deception with us today, please take a quick second to support the channel. Hit the like button, drop a comment below, maybe share a time you caught someone cherry-picking data, and make sure to subscribe so we can keep building these critical thinking skills together. Your support literally makes these deep dives possible.
All right, let's get into why this fallacy is so dangerous and the real-world impact it has on society. It all comes down to the disastrously ill-informed choices it leads to. Imagine you're an investor. A CEO hands you a report claiming company profits spiked in December. Based on that, you might decide to invest your life savings. But what if the hidden reality is that the company lost money for the other 11 months and is headed straight for bankruptcy? The December spike was true, but without the context of the entire year, that isolated truth became a devastating lie. Making decisions based on incomplete, curated data has profound, sometimes ruinous consequences. When someone is insisting you only look at their successes, you really have to assume they are terrified you might look at the rest of the picture. Because when you finally compare those highly visible successes against the failures they deliberately hid, the narrative you were sold completely reverses. It turns out their quote-unquote foolproof system fails way more often than it succeeds. Seeing the full picture just shatters the illusion entirely.
So we've successfully uncovered the mechanics of cherry picking today, but the landscape of logical tricks is huge, and our next trap involves abusing exceptions.
Think about this. What happens when, instead of hiding the bad data, someone takes a bizarre, one-in-a-million rare event and tries to convince you it's the normal rule? That leads us perfectly to the question we'll leave you with today. How do they abuse an exception? That is exactly what we are going to explore in our next explainer. Keep your eyes open, always demand the full context, and I'll see you next time as we tackle the abuse of exceptions.